Fantastic. That's great.
I'd like to call this regular council meeting to order. If I can get a roll call, please.
Chair Galise.
Here.
Councilor Brandon.
Present.
Councilor Gamboa.
Here.
Councilor McEwen.
Here.
Councilor McEwen.
Here.
Councilor Pelletier.
Here.
Councilor Craig.
Here.
Yeah.
Thank you all. And with that, if you can join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. And any adjustment to the agenda?
Yes. Order number 89.
Number 89 is an adjustment. With that, seeking approval of the minutes of the April 14th, 2022 regular meeting.
So move. Second.
Motion by Councilor Medora, seconded by Councilor Bragdon. All those in favor, Councilor Pelletier,
Aye.
Councilor McEwen,
Aye.
Councilor Prey. Aye. Councilor Danforth.
Aye.
Chair Goley, aye. Councilor Medora.
Aye.
Councilor Bragdon. Aye. Passes 7-0. And that moves us right to our special presentations for the FY21 audit review. We have Ron Smith and Brittany Gilman with us. We also have some members of the school board here as well and others. With that, Ron and Brittany, I will turn this over to you to give us kind of a rough idea of where we're at.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for having us. I see that Ron is joining as well. My name is Brittany, and I was the lead auditor for the audits for the town and the school this year. We are new to you this year, so it was great sort of getting up to speed, getting to know everyone. It was a pleasure to work with the folks at both the town and the school. And what I want to do tonight is just kind of go over the high level overview of the audit. I know everyone's really disappointed to hear that I won't read it word for word, but just kind of hit the high points and let you know where you can look if you want more in-depth information. I don't typically share my screen and scroll through the audit as I'm presenting because I find that that makes folks a little bit seasick. But if needed, I definitely can put it up on the screen if we need to go over something in more detail. I'll also be referencing some page numbers, and when I do, I'll be referencing the page numbers at the bottom of the page. So it may not necessarily correspond with where it is in your packet or if you're looking at it in a PDF. That said, I don't know, Ron, if you want to say anything before we get going.
I'm all set, Britt. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So give me 1 second to get things pulled up here. So the first place that I'm going to direct you to in the financial statements starts on page one and goes through page 3. This is the independent auditors report. And in this report, we talk about management versus auditor responsibility. And we give what is probably the most important piece of the audit, the opinion paragraph, which is at the top of page 2. And this essentially says that we believe that the financial statements enclosed are fairly stated in all material respects. It sort of sounds like an underwhelming sentence, but it's the best opinion that you can get. So that's definitely something to be proud of. We believe that your financial statements are fairly stated. And then moving on to page 4, this is called the management's discussion and analysis. It goes through page 11. And this is a really good summary of the audit. So if you aren't able to read anything else, if you don't look at anything else, I definitely recommend that you review the management discussion and analysis. It summarizes things really well. hits the high points, and it's also a good place to look if you're kind of trying to remember, what did she say about that, or what, how did this end up? You can sometimes find it here more quickly than you can in the entire 120-page audit. I'm not going to go over the management discussion and analysis because I am going to go over the entire audit in a little bit more detail, but just know that that is a resource for you and a good summary. The financial statements themselves actually start on page 12, but the first place that I'd like to direct you to is page 16. It's called Statement C. It's the balance sheet for governmental funds. The statements prior to that councils and boards and community members are able to glean the most useful information starting with this statement. Your governmental funds are sort of what we would call your day-to-day funds. So your general fund, it includes, special revenue. On near-term assets and liabilities. So things like capital assets and not presented on this statement. We do disclose them in other places, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we're really focusing on things that are going to happen within a year, so near term. And going from top to bottom, things are presented most liquid to least liquid. So most like cash to least like cash. Excuse me. Something to note about the columns is that these are your major funds. So in order for something to be considered a major fund, it has to meet certain threshold in relation to the totality of your financial statements. And if something does not meet that threshold, then it's grouped together in that second to last column called other governmental funds. And we do have some schedules in the back that break those down, and I'll point you to those as we get a little bit further on. So you have 3 major funds in addition to your other governmental funds. Your general fund, your education fund, which is the general fund for the school department. The school department does have their own set of financial statements that flesh things out a little bit more, but this is the general fund. And then you also have a capital reserve fund, which we break down in more detail in the back as well. So about 3/4 of the way to the bottom of the page, almost to the bottom, are your fund balances. This is what many boards and councils are concerned about, and rightly so. And there are 5 categories of fund balances. So your non-spendable fund balances are items like prepaid expenses, inventory, and tax acquired property. Restricted fund balances, usually restricted by an external source like a grant agreement or state or federal government. You'll see under the education fund, that fund balance is listed as restricted. If you looked at the school's financial statements, it would be listed as unassigned. It's restricted for the town because it can only be used for education. It can't be used for other tax relief. And then committed and assigned fund balances are typically assigned by boards or voters, depending on the highest level of authority. And then unassigned is exactly how it sounds. It's available for use. Your unassigned fund balance for your general fund is about $4.4 million, and that was an increase from the prior year. It's relatively high in proportion to your total general fund budget. So that's, something to kind of look at and do some strategic planning about what you want to do there. Ron might want to touch base on that a little bit later. But it was an increase from the prior year. And I will say that we saw this with most municipalities and schools just due to, windfalls of COVID funds. In some cases, a decrease in services, things like that just led to some savings. And
I would just hop in here, Brittany, and just
Okay.
say some of the things that we typically see when you see that fund balance high, and, kind of consider it one-stop shop money for everything that you do there. Capital reserves, it looks like, are pretty light in the town. And that's one definite thing that I would think that you would probably contemplate with a plan, and moving some of that money over to capital reserves would be my initial thought on that, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you. And there is a budget to actual a little later on, so we'll look at that and talk about some of the reasons for the increase. But it looks like the town has carried a relatively high fund balance. Essentially an income statement for your governmental funds. So same funds as above, but this shows your revenue and expense. Fund balance. So your fund balance went up $80,000 in FY21. And this occurs when you have an excess of revenues over expenditures. It adds to your fund. Skipping one more page, we'll go to page 20, and feel free to tell me to moving along. I'm happy to take questions, along the way or at the end. So page 20 is your statement of net position for proprietary funds. You have one proprietary fund. It's your wastewater treatment fund, and it's an enterprise fund, which is business type. And so generally the primary source of revenues for these funds are like charges for services. And in an enterprise fund, we show both the near and long-term assets and liabilities. So you will see your capital assets and your long-term debt, if there is any, in this fund. And again, it's presented most liquid to least liquid. And your net position towards the bottom is what we call fund balance for an enterprise fund. And as most enterprise funds are, there is a good portion of your net position tied up in capital assets. It's totally normal, but you also have a very healthy, unrestricted, positive net position. And that did increase from the prior year by about $355,000, which we'll see on the next page. This is your income statement for your proprietary funds on page 21. So you can see toward the bottom that $355,000 change in net position. Again, your total net position has been healthy for a number of years. And you don't have too much tied up in capital assets, so that helps your unrestricted net position quite a bit. And then on page 23, the actual notes start. So really the notes make up the bulk of the audit, of the rest of the 100 pages of the audit. It starts with note 1, and note 1 is sort of a summary of all the other notes, I would say. It discloses your significant accounting policies. There's a standard COVID-19 note disclosure that we have to put in now. It's where we would disclose if there were changes to your tax due dates, if you had a closure, if there were any sort of significant things that happened as a result of COVID, and if there were any really quantifiable or projected future impacts, which we kind of don't know, but that's where we would disclose all of that. And then there's the notes follow that same structure of sort of most liquid to least liquid. So there's a note about deposits and investments. There's a note about interfund activity. We get down to notes about capital assets. And then usually the first note that I point folks to is note 6. This is your long-term debt note, and it's all the way starting on page 42. And I usually point this out because I think that it's a really helpful place to see a summary of all of your debt. And in some cases, you don't look at that very often during the year. And it gives you a really, it's a good summary, and it also lists each type of debt that you have and information about the interest rates and the annual payments and the outstanding debt. So you can see when your debt is due to retire, and this can be really helpful for strategic planning. So I'm not sharing this for any other reason other than I think it is a good tool for making decisions. And then notes 9 through 14, which start on page 45. These are your fund balance and net position notes. So this details each type of fund balance that you have, whether it's restricted, non-spendable, committed or assigned. And again, this is just a good place to kind of go and get information about that all in one spot. You have one deficit fund balance that actually belongs to the adult education fund, which is a special revenue fund for the school. It's a small deficit balance. Otherwise, your fund balances are all positive. And then most of the remainder of the notes have to do with pension, main PERS and NMEHD plans with the school, and some of the actuarial assumptions that we make related to that. I kind of say this is good bedtime reading if you're looking for something to kind of put you to sleep. But that's the bulk of the remainder of the notes themselves. We have some supplementary schedules after the notes, which I think can be really helpful. And those start, the first place I'll point you to is page 76. It's schedule 1, which is a budgetary comparison schedule. So this probably looks like a very summarized version of what you might see in sort of quarterly forecasting or your budget to actual reports provided to you. And you can see that your revenue was higher than budgeted. A lot of this was due to intergovernmental revenue, which had to do largely with state revenue sharing. As I understand it, there was some under budgeting for the state revenue sharing because of maybe concerns about the impact of revenue sharing on COVID. So was kind of expecting to see more revenue than budgeted there. And then your expenditures were lower than budgeted. So that's how you come up with the increase to fund balance. And starting on page 88, there's a bit of a larger breakdown of the budget to actual. It goes from pages 88 to 91. And that's the schedule of departmental operations. So again, it's not as detailed as the line item budgets that you might be used to seeing, but it does do a good job of grouping things into various categories. So you can see where you might have been over and where you might have been under. The next place I'll direct you to starts on page 93 and goes through page 96. This is a breakdown of the capital projects fund that I referenced at the beginning. So this is a major fund, but the town does have a further breakdown of that. So further allocations of that, of the capital reserve funds. You can see that broken down here. It's a supplementary schedule that we provide, so you can see how you have allocated those funds. And as Ron said, it's a little light. So a good place to consider some of that unassigned fund balance would be the capital reserve fund. And then starting on page 100, we break down those non-major governmental funds. So it starts with your non-major special revenue funds, and these are both, the school department as well as the town. So you can see the school categorical programs and the school lunch program, student activities and scholarships are also here. And then anything else that didn't meet that criteria of a major governmental fund is going to be included here. Page 103 are your non-major permanent funds. You have 3 of those. And that means that there's a non-spendable component, a permanent component that can't be spent, oftentimes principal. And those are the cemetery, perpetual fund, BUSA welfare, and ministerial and school fund. And you guys are doing a great job hanging with me. We're almost to the end here. On page 105, this is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards, again, inclusive of the town and the school department. When you hit $750,000 of federal expenditures, it triggers additional compliance testing, which is a single audit. We call a single audit. And this year, the major program that we tested was the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And you can see that's about halfway down. You had $921,000 of coronavirus relief funds. So we pick that fund, we do additional testing on that over controls as well as compliance. We go pretty deep into that. And we talk about the results of that in just a couple of pages. So on page 106, we give an internal auditor's report on internal control and compliance. And in this report, we say that we did not uncover any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We'll talk about the management letter at the very end, which are things that we found that are opportunities for improvement, but don't rise to the level of material weakness or significant deficiency. And then on page 109, we talk about the same thing, but for the major programs tested, which, as I said, was the coronavirus relief funds. And on page 110, we give our opinion on each major federal program. And again, this is the best opinion that you can get. We say that you've complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements for the coronavirus relief fund programs. And we found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies during the course of the single audit. And then on page 112, you're probably wishing that I had directed you here right at the beginning because it's a summary of everything that I just said. So it gives the results. The report is unmodified. There's 4 types of opinions that you can get, and unmodified is the best. It means we didn't feel that we had to modify our opinion in any way. And your financial statements are fairly stated. As I said, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, no findings or question costs. So that's all great news. The last 2 pages is just compliance about state requirements and a reconciliation between what we ended up with and some reports that have to be submitted to the state for the school department. And I'll go over briefly the management letter, which I hope you have a copy of. The management letter is a place where we give some thoughts about best practice or opportunities only comment that we had for the town side of things was related to the cash accounts. So we noted that there were some bank accounts that were under the school's control and not under the control of the treasurer for the town. And that was related to Title 30A. And we recommended that those accounts be brought under the control of the town. And even when we were writing this, we understood that that process was underway and I think has now been finalized. On the school side, there were a couple other comments in the school's management letter related to not having student activity funds on the main accounting software. We had the same comment about the cash accounts for them and some reconciliation issues, but the school got their financial statements were also, fairly stated because they're under the auspices of the town. I think I don't have anything else in my presentation, so I'll let Ron add if he wants, and then happy to take questions.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Brittany and Ron. I appreciate the report and the overview for us as a council, for the school board members, and also for the public. Just speaks to the great quality of work that our treasurer does, and just an acknowledgement to her for her good work. Any comments or questions from the council? Councillor Pelletier.
Yes, thank you very much for the great report. Good news. In reading the, going through the schools audit report, school department, on page 24, notes to financial statements, number 14, the very last line of that report kind of has me baffled. It states the resulting restatement increased school special revenue funds, and then it goes from a large number to a lower number. And I just can't understand that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about. So the restatement for the school was in 2 parts. So there was an accounting standard that changed prior to GASB 84, which is what is referenced here. Student activity funds were often considered fiduciary. They were most frequently considered fiduciary funds. And GASB 84 really changed and narrowed the definition of what can be considered a fiduciary fund. And the result of that is that most student activity funds actually, and scholarship funds for that matter, fell under the type of fund called special revenue funds. So we had to restate those from, we would normally have a whole separate statement for fiduciary funds. We had to restate those on to our special revenue funds. Also on the school side, there were some scholarship funds, relatively large scholarship funds, that had not been presented on the audit in prior years. So we had to restate those funds on, and when we do that, we start with the prior year. So that's why we call it a restatement.
Thank you. That explains quite concisely what occurred there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor Pelletier. Any other council comment or question? Councilor Madore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You had mentioned that our unassigned fund balance right now, as of this year, is about 4.4 million. The town of Millinocket usually has tried to keep that fund balance at about $3 million. Matter of fact, that's where the cap is. What would you suggest moving forward? You seem to think that I know the 4.4 is high, but do you think the 3 million cap for the municipality and that unassigned fund balance is high, or is it where it should be?
Ron, did you want to talk about that?
So is the $3 million cap, was the logic for that math based on like 60 days of your operating budget, may I ask?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd stay right there. I don't want to go any lower than that. I wouldn't go any higher than 90 days. I'd actually look at that math right now and certainly look at your capital needs, and I would probably redirect any of that, you know, towards some capital needs for the town.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Medula. Any other council comment or question? All right, seeing none and noticing that we also have members of the school board and the superintendent here, do you have any questions or comments for the auditors?
I do not.
Thank you. Also seeing none, any comments or questions from the public? Councilor Bragdon?
Excellent, great job all, and thank you, Mary Alice.
Thank you, Randy. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none. Thank you again, Ron and Brittany, for your presentation and for doing an overview of where we sit. It's much appreciated.
It was a
Everybody
pleasure.
be
Have a
well
great
and
night.
safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
And with that, that moves us to our second special presenter. We have Chris Winter from the Office of Public Advocacy here to speak to the rate increase on Maine water. Feel free to come up and speak to that.
See her here, I also didn't see her on.
I don't think she can hear me if she's not here on Zoom then.
I don't believe she's on.
All right. Seeing that she's not here, that moves us to the third special presentation. We have Tammy Toohey.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
we're having technical difficulties trying to get her on Zoom, and that's what we're working on right now, so I don't believe she's logged in yet either.
I just.
thank you, Councilor Danforth.
Is that the one connected to audio? There's a D trying to, oh, no, that's not.
I haven't had that request.
Well, we can go to the third presenter, and if Chris joins, then we will go into that afterward. Tammy Toohey, are you with us?
She just joined.
Oh, she just joined? Chris Winter did?
No.
Tammy. All right. Tammy, are you with us?
I am, yes.
All right, thank you for joining us just in time. Appreciate you being here. You're here on behalf of the Penkworth Transportation Services updates. Did you want to give us a brief overview of what we're looking at there?
Sure. Thank you for having me. And we've been working with Jane and the Thrive Penobscot group. And she's given us $500 on a grant or to help pay the customer fare for our general public rides. And we've started using the money in March of last year. And as of last week, we have $86 remaining. And we've been able to do 383 trips. And our drivers to do those trips have drove 7,907 miles. And this has helped out 15 people in Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Medway to pay their customer fare. And Jane would like to expand on this project and have it include another program that we do. We call it a New Freedom Grant, and that is for anyone with a self-declared disability. And the disability could just be that they have trouble walking. They don't have to be classified as disabled. They just have to have some medical reason that makes getting around difficult for them. And that program, each one-way trip is $2.50 that the customer has to pay. And the pilot program that Jane wants to do will cover that customer fare for residents of Millinocket, East Millinocket, and Medway. And with that program, the customer can go anywhere within Penobscot and Piscataquis County, Monday through Friday, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., except for holidays.
Thank you, Tammy, and Councilor Danforth, I think you're wearing the hat of Thrive Penobscot, not as a councilor here, is that correct?
So.
Yes.
Feel free to speak to
Yes.
that though, and the program.
Yes, thank you,
overview.
Mr. Chairman. I think it would be helpful if I gave a little bit of a background information. What Tammy from Penquist is talking about. So I'm also talking from our age-friendly Millinocket committee, because in 2020, the town received $2,500 from the Maine Community Foundation to be able to provide general transportation services through Penquist for your charge. And that those grant funds, it was written specifically, you're hearing her say Millinocket, East Millinocket, Medway. That's not a mistake. It was written into the grants, into the grant application. Cody McEwen, at the time, he co-authored the grant along with me, and it was submitted on the town's behalf. And because of COVID and all things COVID, right, transportation programs sort of ceased for a bit. So we still have $2,000 left from the Maine Community Foundation sitting, in our general ledger. And so in trying to increase transportation opportunities for our citizens, reduce the barrier of the cost, we're partnering with Penquist. They have two specific programs. They have their general transportation program, and those are scheduled rides. And then, as Tammy was explaining, they have a new Freedom Grant. You don't have to identify what grant you're tapping into when you call Penquist. You just are a person that needs a ride, and you explain what your need is, and they figure out what we're going to plug you in. From Thrive Penobscot, that's the work that I do for the hospital. I have $3,000 in grant funds. I'm going to add to the $2,000. That $5,000 in total is going to cover just about a year's worth of fares for residents in Millinocket, East Millinocket, Medway to use these two programs through Penquist. We're going on historical data. That might be too low. It might be just right. We'll utilize it until the grant funds are gone. So having Tammy on here today, I wanted her to be able to speak to Penquist, because I don't completely understand. I get mixed up because they have a brokerage program for those for main care program, main care recipients, and they have general transportation any one of us could use. We have a new flyer prepared, so it will be going out on social media. I'll buy ad space in the local paper. We'll get this out broadly. I'm going to visit the selectmen in East Millinocket and Medway to let them know about it. So it's all grant funds, so there's no cost to the town, but it's going to be a great benefit. We hope we reduce barriers to transportation, increase ridership, really promote Penquist transportation, because they are the providers of transportation for our region. And so hopefully that gives a little bit of background, and if people have questions, Tammy's here to answer them. And I will if I can.
Thank you, Councilor Danforth. Any questions from the council? Councilor Madore?
The transportation, the rides around that people can go through Penobscot and Piscataquis County, are these in one direction, or are these round trip rides, or I know some of them are for someone to say, go to Bangor for a doctor's appointment or whatever, but the time constraint, 7 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, is that a round trip if somebody needs to go somewhere?
Yes, that's the general public program. The general public program runs, there's a schedule of you picked up in one town and you can go to another town, like on Millinocket, you can go from Millinocket to Millinocket on Tuesdays from 10 to 2, Thursdays 10 to 4. You can go to Millinocket to Bangor on Thursdays 9 to 1. I'm sorry, Mondays 10 to 4, and to Lincoln 9 to 1 on Thursdays. That program is very limiting to the customer because they have to fall within those days and those times to those towns. Opening that up to include the New Freedom, instead of serving 15 people, we're currently serving 65 between the two programs. So it opens it up to more people, and it also opens up the days and the times, because you could go Monday through Friday as long as between 7 and 5. And what that means is you have to, the earliest we can get you to your destination is 7 in the morning. The latest we can pick you up to take you home is 5. But you could schedule a ride, say from 9 to 10, or whatever time you want in between that 7 to 5 time range. So it will help to open up transportation a lot more to more people, and they won't have to pay that fare, because that can become pretty expensive. If you're going somewhere 5 days a week, a round trip, that's $10 a day, and that makes it out of reach for a lot of people. So the program that Jane wants to do through Thrive Penobscot and will eliminate that barrier for a lot of people.
Thank you, Tammy. Councilor Danforth?
And I can follow up. So we'll make sure information gets out there, because I know it gets very confusing. I have some pamphlets, some flyers for the general transportation, and we'll continue to push some information out there so people understand the options. There's still, Tammy didn't mention it, but it's still where you do, it's not on-demand rides. So you do have to call and make an appointment. They say 3 days out, like 2 business days after you call. So if you need a ride on Thursday, you got to call Monday, because then there's 2 business days, Tuesday ones for your ride on Thursday. You have to let them know what time you need to be picked up at your appointment and then returned. So when I asked her just about the onboarding process, she said it was very simple. Tammy, do you want to let them know how to get involved in the program?
Sure. You just have to call Links at 973-3695, and we can do everything over the phone. We take your general information, your name, your address, your phone number. If you have any mobility issues, because we need to know, do we have to use the lift van, or can you go with a volunteer driver? Do you have equipment like a walker or oxygen, so we can make sure we have enough room in the car and that we don't schedule too many people in the car at one time, so there isn't room for your equipment? And we need to have the physical address of where you're being picked up, where you're being dropped off, what time you want to arrive to your destination, and what time you want to be picked up from there to return home.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Any other questions or comments from the council? Councilor McEwen?
Just want to say thank you, Tammy, and also Councilor Danforth. But it's just really good to hear the statistics of this program, and that it went off to good use, and that it's going to continue to. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilor McEwen. Any other council question or comment? Seeing none, that of the public. I think there was some in chat, Matt.
There is one chat. Susan D'Alessandro, it's so good to see programs like this. Thanks to Jen Danforth and Panquist for making this happen. Transportation is a big issue for many people.
Thank you, Susan. Any other public comment? Stephanie? Name and address at the microphone. Yes, thank you.
Stephanie Davidson, 14 Russia Boulevard. Would this be a program that somebody could call and set up a regular ride? So if someone needed a ride from work, they could set it up and not have to call every week. I've done that for folks at work, and it's like a 2 or 3 month period, and then you renew it. Is that what this is too?
So Tammy, could you hear the question that was posed?
I heard most of it. from what I heard, it sounds like the question is, can you set up a recurring ride? So you don't have to call every day or every week to put those rides in. And yes, as long as the trip is like the same day of the week, same times, if all of the trip information is the same, we can put it in for 3 months at a time. And then when that 3 months is ending, you would have to call and schedule them again.
Thank you very much, Tammy, and for your question, Stephanie. Any other public, Councilor Danforth?
I just want to add one more thing. I know Penquist has experienced the same thing as other volunteer agencies are, and I know it depends on volunteer rides, volunteer driver availability. Did you want to speak to that, Tammy?
Yes, there's a nationwide shortage of drivers. And before the pandemic, we had roughly 200 volunteer drivers plus our agency vehicle operators. We currently have 15 agency vehicle operators, and that's remained steady. But our volunteer driver base is down to about 100. So we are recruiting more agency vehicle drivers, and we received a grant from National RTAP to help us increase our driver base so that we can hire drivers who will work like a split shift. So we can have drivers on the road later at night until 8 o'clock with our agency vehicles, which are lift equipped. And we're always recruiting for more volunteer drivers. So that's something that we're working on. But even with that shortage, we are still doing roughly 1,100 to 1,300 one-way trips a day.
Thank you, Tammy. Any other public comment or question? Councilor Bragdon?
Laura Sanborn, if you have any further questions, please reach out to myself, Laura Sanborn, Kevin Gregory, and Jane Danforth. We all serve on a variety of committees at Panquist. Thank you for having him.
Thank you for that comment. Any other public comment or question? Councilor Bragdon?
Randy Jackson, is there a website to go to?
Yes, you can get more information on transportation by going to penquist.org and clicking on the transportation links, and feel free to call our office and we can answer any questions that you have and send out our general public schedule. And we're there to help.
Thank you, Tammy. Any other public comment or question? Tana?
How does one become a volunteer?
You can contact our office and we will put you in touch with the volunteer coordinator. And there's different background checks that have to be done and training before you can drive. But we are always looking for volunteers and we welcome anyone that wants to call us.
And contacting your office, do you have a number or an email?
Yep, it would be 973-3695.
Thank you. Any other public comment or question? Councilor Bragdon?
Brittany Gruder, their information is on the Todd website as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Brittany. Any other public comment or question? And seeing none, thank you very much, Tammy, and for Councilor Danforth for all of your work in this area. Obviously, transportation is a big barrier for a lot of people in this region, and appreciate your work on that issue.
Thank you.
Do we have Chris Winter with us? Okay. Well, with that, noting that we do have a bunch of school board members and the superintendent here, if it's all right with the council, I'd like to move that we. No, we don't. Unless it is that. Yeah. I'd like to move that we put order 85, 2022 out of order before the town manager's report. That was a motion.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Goldie, seconded by Counselor Bragdon. All those in favor, Counselor McEwen? Couldn't hear you. I see you saying on.
Sorry.
Counselor Pelletier.
Aye.
Counselor Gray. Aye. Counselor Danforth.
Aye.
Chair Billy. Aye. Counselor Madore. Counselor Bragdon.
Aye.
All right. Order number 85, 2022. Counselor Pelletier, could I have you read that, please?
Certainly. Order number 85-2022, providing for council direction on underfunded school international FY 22 budget. Whereas the FY 22 school international program, a program that is not part of the school general education budget, requires revenues of $135,070 to pay for all budgeted expenditures. And whereas the unapproved revised financial year 22 international program revenues budget of $55,862 carries a deficit of $79,208. And whereas there is an additional revenue receipt expected for $36,944 that would revise the financial year 22 international program deficit from $79,208 to $42,264. It is ordered that the council will not approve any further expenditures to fiscal year 22 school international program until the additional program revenues, which are estimated between $42,264 to $79,208, are available to satisfy the program's commitment.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Pelletier, seconded by Counselor Madore. Mary Alice, I know we have you here in the room. Could you give us a brief overview of what we're looking at here and the necessity for this order?
Says when the international program budget was originally approved, and to repeat, this is a program that has to be self-sustaining in that the revenues that are generated have to cover the budgeted expenditures. And one of the budgeted expenditures was a $75,000 transfer to the town's, to the school budget as a budgeted revenue, which in turn would require not raising taxes on that $75,000. So when the original budget was approved, that budget anticipated that they were going to be able to pay for all their expenditures, which included a $75,000 transfer to the school's budget as a revenue. And they would have $24,401 left over as a surplus that they could carry forward to the next year. Well, I recently, when looking at the school budget, became aware that the school had revised their budget, and in that the school anticipated revenues of $55,862. It anticipated expenditures, excluding the town transfer, of $60,070. That equation right there in and of itself was a $5,000 deficit just to fund the expenditures of the program before you took into consideration transferring $75,000 to the school's revenue budget. So that would be how we come up with the $79,000 deficit. This week received information that the school anticipates receiving another $36,000 revenue. So that means the deficit could potentially be at $42,000. As the treasurer, I am not authorized to sign warrants or sign checks if I see a situation where it's unfunded expenditures. So I have an obligation to bring this situation to the council. As soon as I became aware, I did send the proper emails to the school superintendent raising the issue and making him aware that this was the situation where I would not be able to approve payroll or sign checks until I had direction on how the expenditures were going to be covered.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Are there any, I'm going to go to the superintendent to speak to this as well in a second, but while we have Mary Alice, are there any questions from the council for her? Thank you. Dr. McNaughton, did you have any background that you could provide to council or the public for this?
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. First off, I'd like to thank the council for moving this up on the agenda. I think we all appreciate that. I guess I wanted to start by saying, unfortunately, we were not aware this was going to be on the council agenda until Tuesday night. Two of the three members that help manage this program are not available to speak this evening. In addition to that, on May 3rd, which is next Tuesday, Ms. McGreevy is putting together a full presentation on our international accounts that we're going to present. We're going to dig into all the contracts, the finances associated with the contracts. We're going to talk about the programs that we currently have now, and where we've run into some troubles. And honestly, that's largely related to COVID. One of the things that's happened with China is their educational authorities has tied up some of these contracts. And, we do have that, Mary Alice is right, we do have that check on the way for $36,000. As soon as the Chinese Educational Authority clears, we could have another 120,000 on the way. But I think it would be very beneficial for the council to hear the full report on this program before making any decisions regarding this, because, if we can't pay these bills, right now, we've got several students here that are going to have to head home. We got employees that are going to be impacted by this decision. We've also got 20 students in Zibo, China that won't be receiving diplomas. Will also be in violation of several contracts that have been set up for in years past. So, with that information, I think, again, it would be very helpful for the council to have a full understanding of the program, the finances, the contracts with it. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Does any counselor have any question or comment for the superintendent? Counselor Pelletier?
Sorry about the delay there. Yes, Treasurer Cullen mentioned that you revised the budget. And as far as I'm aware of, that's not allowed. Line items are not allowed to be revised once the budget's been approved. Could you fill me in on that?
The information I have, the budget was not revised. What it is you look at the expenditures, and then when the budget was built last year, there was $75,000 of anticipated revenue. And one of the things we're facing with the Chinese government right now in these contracts is when they don't send that over, obviously that impacts the amount of money that we're receiving from these contracts. So that's where that is at.
Mary Alice, could you speak to
So
that?
basically there was,
Sorry, Counselor Pelletier, I just wanted to have Mary Alice speak to that since that was a question you posed.
When I sent the email to the superintendent, I also attached the budget report where it showed that the budget, I'm looking at the school budget reports to track these expenditures.
Thank you, Mary Alice. Counselor Pelletier, continue.
so is the treasurer saying that the budget was revised, the school budget on this particular line item?
I believe that's what you just said, yes.
Well, I'd like to read you a line in the Millinocket Charter Code regarding that. And it says, hold on here, I gotta find it.
he looks for that, how long ago was it that you were informed, Dr. McNaughton, from our treasurer about this issue?
Can you say it again? You were broken up on me.
How long ago were you notified by the treasurer about this issue?
I'd have to go back and check to give you an exact date. But you know, it's been a week or two. I don't know the exact date, Steve. I'd have to check.
That was Counselor Bragdon. Counselor
Oh, I'm
Pelletier,
sorry.
did you find the line?
No, I'm still,
Counselor Prey?
Yeah. Looking at the work I had, I thought that the revenue estimate was 159,000 and then reduced down to 55,000. So that's the question of when was that reduced? When was that budget number changed? Because it kind of implied that you're getting late notice, and I think the treasurer didn't get any notice about the change. And I would be interested, and I understand, Josh, you might not have that, but if you could find out when you adjusted those numbers, so we'd have an idea as to what the window was on making those adjustments. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be certainly willing to meet with Mary Alice and look into that because we have not made any adjustments to this program whatsoever. This program is run, you know, it was running and when I came in and took it over. The big thing that's changed is the revenue is obviously not coming in like we had hoped because of the COVID pandemic and trade relations with China.
Thank you, Counselor Prey. Counselor Pelletier?
yes, that section of the charter is C405, powers and duties of board, preparation of budget. And section C reads, approval of the school budget shall fix the appropriation for each of the line item categories, and a school committee shall not authorize the transfer of approved amounts from one line item category to another without prior approval of town council. So if there's a revised budget line, it didn't come to the town council.
That is correct, Counselor Pelletier, and Mr. Superintendent, I do also agree with that point that, you know, we all need to operate within the town charter and within our own policies, and it clearly states that any kind of change, the treasurer needs to be notified and the town council needs to make those approvals. Is that something that you can confirm that you also understand and will also carry out?
I can confirm that I understand that. What I want the council to be very clear of is I have not made any adjustments to that budget. So I'm willing to meet with Mary Alice to dig into it, to find out when it was done, but it has not been done by me.
Mary Alice, did you want to respond to that?
I'm looking at a report that was sent to me in April. And it shows the international program revenues of $55,000. And it also shows that the expenditures changed. Why is this report different than the budget that was presented when we had the February meeting with the council, and the council approved reserving $1.5 million for the special revenue program?
I think you're going to find the changes is that the revenue has not come in from those programs.
It says adopted budget, 55,000. I don't have my glasses on. $862, which matches the actual receipts, $55,862. If there, I think the bigger issue here is if there is a problem where we don't expect that the program's going to run into a deficit, we really need to be talking about this ahead of time and not discussing how we're going to work through the problem. In this case, I read this report and found the problem. I would rather that the school is bringing this information to the council and not the treasurer.
Councilor Madore?
Is it my understanding Superintendent, that if this money isn't, the town doesn't go ahead and put more money into this program, that students that are in school right now for this year will have to leave. They won't be able to finish up the school year here with the fourth quarter coming up, and that the international program, the diplomas that we give out won't be done for this year, 2022.
That is correct. So we have 3 students, international students. We have one from Germany, one from France, and one from Spain right now that are with us. We also have, a staff person that works this program. The $36,000 we spoke of earlier is coming in from Zibo, China. Those students have been working on our standards throughout this year. So obviously, if we don't have the staff to be able to issue and verify that, that's going to be an issue for those 20 students. And then I do want to note Ningbo, China. So their contract is currently tied up with the Chinese Educational Association there. If that contract happens to come through between now and June, that's going to bring in an additional $120,000 worth of revenue, because we have students in that school that are also working on our standards for U.S. diplomas. So, it's an unfortunate situation with the Chinese government, what we're facing. We can't control that whatsoever, unfortunately, though everything is in order. And as soon as they go ahead and authorize that, we're going to have this revenue coming in. And then, like I said, I go back to, May 3rd is when we're discussing this issue with our school board to talk about some of our plans to move forward, summer programming, trying to desperately expand opportunities for homestays, because that's something that's really held the program back from what I've been told, a number of years. We have these contracts in place for a considerable amount of time. If you look back historically, this program has brought in millions of dollars into the budget over a number of years. So it would be a shame to have it wash away now, considering the folks, the students that it would impact right now, and then the future of what it could do to help offset the cost of the school department in general.
Mr. Chairman, if I could do a follow-up, please. Mr. Superintendent, could money from the art funds that the school received, or money that basically the town has, or the 1.5 million that the town has already agreed upon to move into the program, couldn't the money come from that to make sure that for this calendar year, these students can go ahead and finish their time here at Stearns, and the diploma students get their diplomas?
So unfortunately, it could not, because there's a couple situations there. For us to expend those funds to guaranteed reimbursement, we have to rewrite our grant. We would have to be very creative wording relating it back to student learning loss, which I think we may be able to do. But the reality is, to rewrite the grant and get approval, we're going to be well into the summer before that happens, even if we were start on it tomorrow. Just the timely process of the state reviewing and confirming or denying what projects would be acceptable or not with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Madore. Any other Councilor Danforth?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From what I understand and what I'm hearing, there's been a lot of miscommunication, no communication, breakdown in the process. I would hate to see, the educational program interrupted, as you have said that it would be. And the way I understand the order is, the way it's written, it just says we're not going to write any more checks. So I'm just wondering next steps to resolve this issue with the least amount, I guess, of damage, but also know that there's going to be movement going forward, that processes are in place, and we're not dealing with this again. So whether this order is voted down or is tabled so we get more information in a clearer process, I'm interested in hearing the presentation that you spoke about. But yeah, I'm concerned about the outcome that you've described, Mr. Superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Danforth. Councilor McEwen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually echo those same comments by Councilor Danforth. I would be more so in favor of tabling this order right now to learn more of the information about the program that you've already prescribed. And in that interest, I don't think it's in the best interest of the students for us to approve this order tonight and prevent the stopping of that cash flow. Some considerable problems will occur if that doesn't happen, but in that same right, making sure all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed, as was, I would hope, the likely intent of this anyways. So I appreciate the treasurer for bringing this up, and also that, we're going to find a positive outcome through this and not affecting the students, which are really the most important facet of this order anyways. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McEwen. And to that point, I hope it's clear and known to the superintendent and the public and school board members that are here that this order is not whether we're judging the validity of the program or the quality of the program or anything of the sort. It's more so the process that needs to take place for these types of issues. Personally, I would not like this type of precedent to be set where there are adjustments to a budget with the school board, which is a department of the town, may I remind everyone, that needs to be approved by town council, and the treasurer needs to be notified of any such adjustments. I just want that to be extremely clear moving forward, that it is written in our charter and all of our policies. I just don't want this to be a recurring issue as what's been stated by Councilor Danforth. Councilor Prey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification purposes, go back to the superintendent. As the treasurer has stated, she doesn't have the authority to write any checks. It would take council action to, if we table this or address it now, it doesn't change the current situation. If I heard you right, you mentioned that this needs to be done quickly, obviously, but we don't meet again until the second Wednesday in May. Does that prohibit you from continuing the program until the council, I guess that you and the treasurer work this out as to what needs to be done? Because then the question is either you're not going to have the revenues or the town's going to have to self-find the revenues to do that. I have this predates you, I have a little bit of a bad taste with the school board from a number of years ago when the previous governor took money away from the school program because the town of Millinocket wouldn't agree to purchase the landfill site down south Wendover in East Millinocket. We lost about $250,000. I think it was 248,000 or 278,000, something like that. And that school board came to us and we fronted that money, and they said the following year they'd give it back to us. They came back and reported that they didn't have the full amount, but they did have some money left over from that. And the school board had voted to keep the money instead of the commitment that they had given, that they would give it back to the town, because we're borrowing it from the taxpayers. The school board doesn't raise taxes. They spend money, and they spend it for a purpose, to improve the quality of education. And that's important, and I think we share that with them. But the final analysis comes down to the town to raise that money by setting mill rates. And so we're the one that's always on the hook for these things when they don't, when the operations don't go smoothly and there's not the degree of communications that we need. I would hope that the answer would be that we could wait until the next meeting to resolve this. And I would hope that the two of you can come back with some type of proposal as to perhaps another way to raise the revenues or something. I hate to go back. We've been using the fund balance to pay for a lot of things. Partially that's what it's there for, but at the same time, I just, like I said, I don't like these types of surprises and not having the flow of communications that's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Prey. And Mary Alice, did you want to speak to that?
The reason bringing this up is I need direction from the council on, the way this budget is right now, it's in a deficit. Do you want the deficit in the event that there's not enough revenues generated to come from the unassigned fund balance? Because there is going to be some expenditures coming up before the next council meeting.
And Dr. Madon, do you have any thoughts on that, on us waiting until the next council meeting to take any action?
But he has
Well, I mean,
expenditures.
you know, Mary Alice is right. We have expenditures coming up. We have, you know, we pay the families who house our children. We have an employee, obviously, that we have to pay. There's going to be, you know, a few other little fees here and there. If the other contract for Nimbo comes in, there's some pieces there, some fees there. I will say, you know, part of the issue globally with this is that there was $75,000 of this revenue expected from this program that we know we're not going to have. I mean, you know, nobody's making any bones about that. I will say, in the expected revenues, there are other areas where you're going to be significantly over, as far as we're going to be receiving more revenue than expected. One of them is the unorganized territories. You know, we've got some more students that moved out there. We're going to far exceed what we expected to receive for money there. So I think at the end of the year, you know, we're projected to still have, you know, a $30,000 balance in that account. The 75,000 does throw a wrench into that without a doubt. So, you know, I go back to what I originally said. You know, we're bringing this to our school board on Tuesday to have a full evaluation of this program in itself, because we recognize that COVID's thrown a major wrench into the finances. We don't, you know, we're going to have to make some planning for the future. You know, homestays continue to be a significant issue, finding people. I mean, we've got students lined up from other countries that are wanting to join us here, but we can't find homestays. So there's a potential for this to continue to make a significant amount of money for the school. You know, I would hate to have this issue with that $75,000 of anticipated revenue because of COVID throw a wrench into that. You know, my suggestion moving forward is, you know, folks attend the school board meeting so you can see the full report, including all the contracts, and understand that. I would be happy to meet Mary Alice, and we'll have Josh Deacon come and join us as well, being our business manager, and to dig into those pieces a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Councilor Prater, do you have a follow-up and then going to the manager?
I'm just concerned in reference to you mentioning revenues from the unorganized territory. By state law, you can only use that for unorganized territory. So it's not like funds that you can use for the international program or move around to other parts of the budget. So I'm really concerned in reference to the, I think, a little bit of a misrepresentation of having accessibility to some funds.
If the order was revised that authorized me to continue to approve, you know, sign the checks and pay the bills until, I mean, that's just it. I mean, I need to know that I can cover, that I can sign these warrants, or rather that I can pay the bills that these warrants are, that when they're presented. Because with the information I have, if this revenue that of 159, if there's 75 at risk, then this budget is still underfunded.
Thank you, Mary Alice. I'll go to our manager, then I do want to go to the public and school board members who might want to speak on this. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't necessarily want to get too much into this specific topic, but related to it. You know, part of the reason we're having this discussion is because of a breakdown in communication. And I believe that's related to an inherited and unnecessary tension between the school and the town, of which Councilor Prey alluded to earlier. You know, these are outdated things from the past that I think that given the right communication, we can work through and have a much stronger relationship. It is very frustrating to approach this communication with that mindset already there. It's a conditioned thing. There's a lot of new people at the table who don't acknowledge these old, outdated arguments. You know, we need to increase the communication and have much more honest and transparent communication and work much better together. And we need to let go of these old fashioned ways. And I see the potential for, you know, a much stronger relationship moving forward if we can get past these and increase the communication in a very transparent and honest way. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for those thoughts, Mr. Manager. We go to the public if, or school board members, if any school board member wants to speak to this. I know we have a bunch here. Erica Mackin.
Hi, Erica Mackin, school board member, 189 Lincoln Street. I just want to say thank you for asking really good questions. On April 5th, the school board met, and part of this international program was reviewed in the superintendent's report. The numbers that we were given, the information that we were given seemed unclear of the direction of the program. At that meeting, and after that meeting, I asked for more information. I just wanted to go on record as saying the reason this meeting is happening next week on Tuesday, where the international program is going to be presented, is because I asked for it. And we need to know more about it before we vote on things. We need to have proper information when we come to meetings, so we know what we're voting on and we understand the full picture of where the program was and the direction it's heading. And I also want to go on record as saying that I don't know that the direction of this program is what it used to be. Our relations with China are different now. As we know, they're not very stable. Students in China can get their diplomas in other countries. And we do have the issue of homestays, not having the homes that we have open to these students. I think the writing is on the wall, that it needs to be considered. And I'm glad that we're talking about it next week, but I did want to say that that's because I asked for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Any other public comment or school board member comment? Yes, please.
My name is Cam Mishu. I live at 20 New York Street. I've been a taxpayer for about 30 years and a school employee since 2006. And I do take exception to the comment that the international program is not, maybe shouldn't be where we should be going. I saw it from the ground up, and I can tell you that public schools do not have sources of revenue to raise. And the fact that we rent space in our school and we also bring revenue in by international students is amazing. We had calls from all over the country when we first started the program. Orono High School has the program now because of us. Presque Isle High School has the program now because of us. Every public school in the state of Maine that has international students has it because Stearns High School started it first. And as you can tell, I'm proud of that. We have COVID happening right now. It's not been easy. But we did have the opportunity to have many students come this year that are European students. But because of homestays, we're not able to. I think that if there's some more conversation about that, that we could maybe have some more people step up about housing, because it's a great experience for the kids. It's a great experience for our students, and it's a great experience for the families that they stay with. So I really appreciate the comments that you're willing to give this an opportunity to talk some more about what's going on. This is an important decision that you're making. It's not something that you can get out of next week and then go back to doing it again in a month, because you have to have interviews through ICE, which they're so busy that to get those interviews in place would be very difficult to do. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, and just a reminder of what I stated earlier. This is more about the process than it is the program. We're not here as a council to make a determination as to whether the program is effective or not, or whether we agree with it or not. It's more the process of following our policies and our charter, making sure, as our manager said, that we have a healthy relationship between our two boards, and that communication is flowing appropriately. I just want to restate that. Any other public comment? Yes, Matt.
Susan D'Alessandro, did I hear the auditors say that there are school funds that don't even go through the treasurer? And if this program is supposed to be self-supporting, what happened? I don't trust China to do anything. We pay over half our town budget for the school, not to mention other funds coming to the school. This is all disturbing. There are more, but I don't know if you want to address this one first before I move on.
Just to thank you for your comment. The things that do not pertain to this specific order, I'm not going to address. I ask that you ask the superintendent and the school for any specific questions relating to the program. And apparently they have a presentation, so I would just urge you to view that. Mr. Dumais?
Jesse Dumais, 10 Somerset Street, Millinocket, Maine. I think this is a clear communications breakdown and mismanagement of this program, which sounds like a great program. I was on the council when the millions were rolling in from it. So I think that the purpose of this order tonight, though, is so Ms. Cullen can either pay the bills or not. So I think the rest of the kumbaya fluffy stuff sounds real. There's a time and place for that, but needs to know whether in the interim, what are you guys going to do? You guys going to support her paying the bills or not doing it?
Thank you for your comment. Councilor Bragdon, were there other comments?
Yes. Brittany Gritters, echoing Sue, what school funds weren't reported to the town previous to this audit?
That would be a question for our manager and the superintendent.
Susan D'Alessandro, at one time, there were about 18 kids in the program. Now there are 3, and now it's an emergency that has to be solved yesterday. How did this big surprise come from nowhere? To me, this is all mind-boggling. We heard how this was going to be such a moneymaker when it was first introduced and not a money taker.
Well, Susan, thank you again for your comment. I think this just speaks back to the communication issue, and from what I heard from the superintendent, that he does recognize the process now and what's supposed to take place. I would hope that that is adhered to moving forward, and that we can move forward in a positive direction between our two boards and make sure that communication is flowing.
Brittany Gruder, where is it being advertised to host for visiting students?
That would be a question for the superintendent as well. I don't know if you want to speak to that briefly. It might be a good opportunity, Mr. Superintendent. Where are the host houses being advertised?
Yeah, so over the years, it's gone out of the newspaper, word of mouth, district website, things along those lines. We've made several pleas, I know, throughout the years, not just this year, school board meetings as well. We've been putting it out that way to be able to try to promote this. And, you know, it's unfortunate. We've got, Kama spoke to, we've got 10 students that wanted to come this year that we couldn't find housing for. I do know the school board in the years past, not to get too far into it, but has discussed about the housing issue. Because I guess from, you know, my understanding, housing's been a big issue with this program since day one. So, you know, I think that's a decision that our school board is going to have to look at in depth of whether we continue with a diplomacy program where students are working in different countries on our standards, and how far we continue to press for the home stays, because there's a lot of money to be made if you can find home stays, which we can't.
Thank you for that response. Any other public comment?
Sharon Decker, I agree with more open communication.
Thank you, Sharon. Yes, please.
Sandy Sullivan, Sunset Drive. We just advanced the school like $1.5 million. And now they're asking for another 75 with 24 coming back. The taxpayers are going to eat the rest of the other 42 or whatever the difference is. Is that how I understand it?
Well, those are two separate issues, but yes, in this particular order, and with this international program, yes, the taxpayers would be footing the bill for the difference.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment before going back to the council? Seeing no other public comment, Councilor Pelletier.
Yes, I'd like to make a couple points and at the end, possibly offer an amendment to this order. Taking the manager's comments to heart, yes, there's been a history of poor communications between the boards. And recently, we tried to get better transparency and change their communications policy during their board meetings, which would be able to have these kind of pointed questions done at that level at that point in time. Now having things end up being somewhat like this. And taking everybody else's comments to heart. It's not the program, and it's, we certainly don't want to be harming any of the students. So to that end, I would like to make a motion that it is ordered verbiage be changed, deleted, and instead state it is ordered that the council directs the treasurer to pay the international program warrants through to the end of May, period. That would allow us for the time to get together in executive session to create an order to address the long-term issues with this program with the school board.
Motion on the table.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Councilor Pelletier, seconded by Councilor Danforth. Discussion of the council on the motion. Councilor Madore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree. It's an 11th hour situation. It's as much as I would like to go ahead and have a deep dive into this. I see that there are students that are going to be impacted if we don't make a decision and make it now to allow for the completion of their school year. I think that would be a shame. I think it would be a disservice. Regardless of what's going on as far as, how this was approached or who was approached or how it wasn't approached, I think we have to take into consideration the students and their being able to finish up the school years. So I agree with Councilor Pelletier as far as allowing or ordering the treasurer to pay the warrants for this program to the end of May. I think that would alleviate it for now. And I also, if I could, would like to say that I've been here the longest of anybody, and I remember the turbulent times, but I will say that over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I found that communication and working back and forth across the table with the school board, in my opinion, has come a long way. And we've done much better as far as the council and the board communicating with each other. and working to a common goal and a common purpose, which is the education of the students of the town of Millinocket. I don't find that there has been any, I find that the comments that there has been tensions, and that I like to say, I've never known the situation to be as good as it is now, communication wise between the two boards. And I would like to encourage that continue. But going back to the other point, I would agree with Councillor Pelletier and support his order. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dora. Councilor Prey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to state that I think we're missing a little bit of the boat here in reference to the international program. Not only the fact that we're providing education to foreign students, we're bringing them here to expose our kids to a broader perspective of the world. And I think that's an important part, because as these kids go through the school year, and they start to learn a little bit more about other places, I think is part of an educational program you can't have if you don't have that direct exposure with people who live other types of lives in other parts of the world. And I hope that the program grows, and that obviously that it's profitable. And so I would just, one other suggestion, I know that in the Foxcroft Academy, I think they have a dormitory for their students. And if we have that many students interested, maybe there's a housing situation that the school international program could purchase and hire somebody to kind of be the monitor, or the title, whatever you want to give it to, housing master or something. But if we have that and we can expand the program, I think it would be advantageous for Millinocket. You know, there are a number of international companies that are interested in developing in Maine throughout the state. They've taken, some of them have gone along the coast, and some of them have gone, I've seen up in Aroostook County and in central Maine, western Maine. If we can attract them, because some student comes here and some parent that has the money that can afford to send them, bring us some type of economic development, we'll never see it in the school budget, but we'll feel it in the community and through the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Prey. Any other council comment? Councilor Madore.
I move to call the vote.
I'd like the public to be able to speak on it first. If you want to withdraw that motion.
No.
There's a motion.
It has.
There's been no second. Does anyone want to second it? The motion has failed. Any other council comment? Seeing none, out of the public. Also seeing none, back to the council. All those in favor of the motion, Councilor Pelletier.
Aye.
Councilor McEwen.
Aye.
Councilor Prey.
Aye.
Councilor Danforth.
Aye.
Chair Gully by. Councilor Madore.
Aye.
Councilor Bragdon. Aye. The motion passes, the amendment passes 7-0. Any further discussion of the council on the amended order? I'll just state that I agree wholeheartedly with what Councilor Prey said on the importance of international programs in general, and the effect that it can have on younger kids in their formative years. I've also spent many years myself in other countries, and it's had a really profound impact on me in my life, and hope that there can be a way that this program can be made revenue positive, and we can continue to bring others into our community. Any other comments from the public on the amended order? Seeing none, back to the council. All those in favor, Councilor McEwen.
Aye.
Councilor Pelletier. Councilor Pelletier, you're muted. I think that. One more time.
I'm not muted now. Aye.
Give us an answer. There you go. Councilor Prey.
Aye.
Councilor Danforth.
Aye.
Chair Gully by. Councilor Madore.
Aye.
Councilor Bragdon.
Aye.
The amended order passes 7-0. With that moves us to our manager report, to give us an idea of where we are at in our agenda.
For those of you that don't have an agenda handy, the manager's report first. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report is submitted and available on millinocket.org, as well as in the council packet this evening. I hope that folks have had an opportunity to review it. I will give some highlights and remind that since changing the process, this is our first monthly department updates included in this, and does include the department report from the Millinocket Memorial Library as well. So for the manager's report portion of my update, we are in full swing of the FY23 budget workshops. We held our first workshop on the 21st of April. I felt that it went very well, all things considered. Our treasurer and myself fielded questions from council, along with other department heads. Several of them were in attendance and able to speak to some of the questions there. The schedule moving forward for the budget workshops will be each Thursday for the next 3 to 4 weeks. On council meeting weeks, the meeting will start at 4 o'clock. On council off weeks, the meeting will start at 5 o'clock. I'll be working with the town clerk, Diana, in the next few days to get that schedule posted on our website and social media. I wanted to speak briefly about some employment vacancies that we're facing. We do have several currently across a few departments. We are looking at vacancies within Fire EMS, Public Works, Rec Department. Still has one. I was notified today that the swimming pool is now fully staffed with lifeguards, so they are going to be seeking some additional funds to pay for the training for a few of those new employees who are not returning employees and are not trained or not certified, mind you, but they are fully committed. So we will be working to hopefully find some additional wiggle room to help get those new lifeguards certified. We do urge any interested and qualified applicants from our community to consider municipal employment. They are careers second to none and have incredible benefits and retirement packages. So we really do hope to see these positions filled and gain some interest in some upcoming openings that we'll be facing over the next year as people have retirements planned throughout multiple departments. I do have a new managers training conference coming up with hosted by the May Municipal Association. That is June 9th. I'll be out of the office that day, that training. I'm very much looking forward to that, meeting and networking and learning with other new managers across the state. I have in here about a recent wastewater facilities tour that I took with our wastewater superintendent, Jim Charette. It really was an eye-opening experience for me. We have incredible infrastructure here for wastewater, and the Jim and his team do an incredible job to keep, in Jim's terms, keep our sewers humming, and the quality of work that they provide puts near perfect quality water back into the river after it's been treated and discharged. This is a state-of-the-art facility and network throughout our town, and it's something that I hope we don't take for granted, because there's an incredible amount of work that goes into the operation of that system and the upgrades over the years to keep it functioning. The other updates in my portion come from committees. We have had discussions recently in Sustainability Committee. You will be seeing some recommendations coming forward from that group regarding the Peddler's Hill permitting. We are looking to put forth a new ordinance suggestion that would change that fee and make it more simplified to an annual fee as only one option at a $15 rate, which is, you know, nickels on the dollar for those people and much easier to track. Another announcement is that the community garden is finally built and in place. It's extremely exciting. I got to go over there and spend some of the afternoon watching and helping. The plots are now available for rent. There is no cost to those rents. And if anyone in the community is interested in renting a spot in that community garden to grow some vegetables and help create some food for them for their households, they can contact Brittany Gruder. Brittany can be reached at bgruder@mrhmaine.org. You can find that on our website and our social media page as well. I do want to remind folks that we really do celebrate the engagement of our community in these meetings, and we hope to continue to see increased comment and feedback and participation. That is the only way that we really can function and grow. We prefer communication to be off social media to some extent. The best way to reach me is right here at the town office, 723-7000, or manager@millinocket.org. That is the most constant way to get a hold of us. We cannot guarantee that we will see or respond to all Facebook comments. In terms of our departments, the Public Works, Ralph and his crew are doing a great job making their rounds throughout the community and the neighborhoods, street sweeping, cleaning up the sidewalks. They do have a new project going on at the Public Works garage right now, updating all the lighting to LED. Local electrician Adam Willett is working on that project. That will decrease their power consumption considerably. And there is also $2,000 plus rebate there for the installation by Mr. Willett. The cemetery is now open to the public, and we do have volunteers again this year working to fix the abandoned stones in the old section. Some of them do not have foundations under the stones and have fallen over or are leaning. So we have some great volunteers that are very passionate about the restoration of those stones for people and their families. And there is a pretty large section of fence that they're looking to replace up there. Ralph is working with our community initiatives director to look for additional funding to help ease the financial burden of that project. In the airport, I wanted to mention that we are expecting our airport master plan in the near future. It was due a month ago. It was due in March. So we are hoping that our engineering firm Hoyle Tanner is speedy on delivery for that. We do need that information to add to our congressionally directed spending application. So it is pertinent information, and it will be helpful as we work towards the future of that airport. In wastewater, Jim had noted that there was a substantial power usage increase over the past over the month of March, and he did include a graph that I included in my report to show that peak there. So there will be a notable rise in the payment for that. It's also noted in here, I think this is a great fact to bring up. In the month of March, our wastewater facility processed 30.9 million gallons of wastewater. And that's an average of 1 million gallons a day, with a peak of 2.1 million gallons on March 25th. That's an incredible amount of water going through our infrastructure here in town. And it's just so impressive to me that we can do that and treat it to near perfect standards. Our code enforcement officer, Evan, is new to, the role is new to the line of work. And he just recently passed his first test on his way to full certification, legal issues and enforcement techniques. That is a very exciting first step. He's doing an incredible job for us, taking on many new permit applications. As the weather warms up, people are looking at a lot more projects around their house, porches, roofs, alterations, the whole 9 yards. And he is doing an incredible job keeping up with his training and, you know, processing those applications and doing the appropriate research for community members on that. We do look to create some new messaging for social media and our website around the importance of permitting and what permitting is needed for certain projects throughout the town. I understand there are a lot of projects done in homes, attached to homes, on properties that are unpermitted and do affect our tax base in the long run. So, you know, we hope to approach that in an educational way so that we can make sure people in our community know the reason for those permits, and that the projects they're doing do require permits according to our town charter. Our community initiatives director is full swing. She is really hitting the ground running with us. She's working with multiple department heads on possible additional funding that'll offset our budgeted costs. So we're looking at some potential savings there. A number of the projects she's working for include funding for our proposed or upcoming proposed dog park, the potential for a new mobile generator that would be owned by a wastewater treatment facility, but would have the potential to power any building or facility that the town owns. In the case of an emergency, it could also be used for events or other reasons. So we feel pretty good about some grant funding projects for that, as well as some equipment and PPE for the fire station, which would help offset some costs for them. With the town clerk's office, we are continuing to see payments roll in for 21-22 real estate and property, personal property tax. We are looking at about 241,000 remaining unpaid. So you can see that that number has been dropping substantially over the past few months. And that is for real estate, and personal property is down to a remaining balance of a little over 11,000. So we are making a lot of progress there. We do appreciate the community stepping up and starting to send those payments in more frequently. We did release some messaging. It is a campaign year for multiple things. I believe we did put out some messaging on the placement of political and temporary signage throughout the town to make sure that candidates running for boards or councils know exactly where they are and are not allowed to place those signs throughout the community. We urge anyone with interest in those seats to consider that, reading through that message so they understand where that is appropriate. There's a note in here regarding the primary election on June 14th. The application only is now available for requesting absentee ballots. A lot of great activity coming from the fire, ambulance, public safety officer. Lots of meetings there. We did get some bad news there with the McKenzie Foundation grant. We did not receive that this year, but I believe Chief Malcolm is working pretty closely, as I mentioned earlier, with our Community Initiative Director, Amber, to seek additional funds to solve some of those issues they are looking at. The police department report is attached. Much of the same type of highlights we've been looking at the past number of months there regarding mental health, suicide, drug-related calls, and a constant presence of that and an increase. As well, you'll find the monthly report from the Millinocket Memorial Library attached. Diana has begun sending me these department updates once a month. They are the updates that she provides to her board of directors. But with the topic of increased funding coming from the town to the library, we thought that it would be beneficial to have regular updates again from the library. And we have come to the agreement that Diana will be, this is Diana Furukawa, not Diana, the town clerk. We will just make that very clear. Diana Furukawa from the Millinocket Memorial Library will be joining us quarterly to discuss finances and go over some more detailed and thorough updates from the library. In this monthly update, you can see that there are updates on operations, personnel. They are looking to expand their team. The Gear Library is set to relocate to the home of Boreal Theater. They're just this first building here on Penobscot Avenue. They will be open there, according to this report, on May 2nd. That is very exciting. I've seen an early stage of that setup. I'm happy to see that taking place in former councilor Mr. Jackson's building. They will be open there Monday through Friday, 10 to 5, and also on Saturday from 10 to 1:30. That's an incredible resource for our community. You have the opportunity to have a free library card. You have the opportunity to rent for 7 days at a time, fat tire bikes, mountain bikes, kayaks, canoes, snowshoes, cross-country skis. Get out with your family, get some good exercise. There's plenty of trails. Great opportunity there, all at no cost, thanks to their partnership with Outdoor Sports Institute. They are really bulking up their programming again and special activities. They were hosting vacation camps for the kids. I know my daughter was a participant in both of the vacation camps they offered this year, and it was an incredible opportunity in partnership with the Katahdin Woods and Waters, Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, their Katahdin Learning Project. They also had a very well attended and very well run and organized series on addiction and incarceration in the community. I spoke at it myself, along with Council Chairman Steve Gottlieb here. That was an incredible opportunity to speak about trials and tribulations in substance use disorder, alcoholism, the effects of incarceration, and the long effects on the community, and the misunderstanding that has come along with that over the years, but the breaking down of the stigma around it, showing there's life on the other side. I really strongly appreciated the opportunity to participate in that program. I look forward to many more programs from the library to come. I will end there and accept any and all questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And just adding one thing to that, I had sent out to the council some draft language on a resolution supporting the arts, speaking to the importance of arts in our community. Eric Goodwin representing KTP, the property at Central and Penobscot, as well as Randy Jackson, are interested in a resolution for the council to consider, basically speaking to the importance of the arts. So not only can it be stated publicly, but also potentially incorporated into our comprehensive plan and an opportunity to boost their funding opportunities. So we don't really need to have a discussion on it right now, but if anyone from the public wants to submit any thoughts on that as well, it will be an additional agenda item at our future council meeting, but I just wanted that to be made publicly known so the public is aware of that upcoming item. And with that, any councilors have any comment? Councilor Pelletier?
Yes. First off, I'd like to echo the manager's praise of the wastewater plant, and as to their capacity, I believe they have a lot more capacity there available, given our drop in population. And regarding Peddler's Hill permits, I agree with that. And my only comment would be, I'd like to see it relocated. I don't think it's a good place for it. And I'd like to congratulate the Sustainability Committee and all the volunteers and groups that collaborated in the community garden, and look forward to having more growth of that effort. Public Works is to be commended on the lighting project. I'd like to really thank the volunteers for the cemetery work they're doing on the headstones. And I'd like to see an update at some point from the treasurer regarding the school department's reimbursements on their COVID grant. And congratulations to the code enforcement officer on his passing some qualifications, and applaud his planning on using social media to educate the public on the permits that process. And to say that the Diana Furukawa's report on the Millinocket Memorial Library is comprehensive and informative is really an understatement. You really got to read this thing through. The return on investment is, astounding, and all the program information will really set you back. I really encourage people to read that. And that'll do it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Pelletier. Any other council comment on matters of support? Councilor Bragdon? Oh, Councilor McEwen?
Oh, you're good. I just wanted to echo Councilor Pelletier's comments. I think he got all the points I was looking for. Minus one that is for the town manager. Could you please give me an update on where we stand with community development block grant project, when that project is expected to be shovel ready, and what your timeline is on that?
The last update that I had from the project manager from Haley Ward was that they are still hoping to break ground, I believe, in the month of May. I do not have a recent update within the past 3 weeks or so, but I'm happy to connect with Jared again and look for some new information on that. I know that the contractor was looking at some extensive lead times on material, so I know that was a play in there, but I do plan on that project moving forward, and hopefully still beginning in this next coming month.
I know, I really appreciate that. And if you've already updated those facts in the last few weeks, apologize for not noting them, but I appreciate that follow-up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McEwen. Any other council comment on manager's report? Councilor Bragdon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everything that Councilor Pelletier said, I greatly appreciate everything he said because I agree with it. I love the addition of the libraries report. The only question I have, and possibly you can answer this, Chairman Galid, is I received a comment from a citizen asking about the community garden. Their concerns were if they were to do a plot, they were concerned about vandalism. Is there any precautions or any cameras in place to prevent vandalism, or is it on the trust system?
Just like most spots in town, whether it's public or private, there are no surveillance cameras on the park. So we would hope and expect that the community would respect that space just as they would any other piece of property in town. Thank you, Councilor Bragdon. Any other council comments on the manager's report? Seeing none, I'll just also echo the appreciation for our new code enforcement officer passing his first test there. It's also really nice seeing the CID position noted in these managers' reports.